Hey guys, it's Parita. Welcome back to another episode with Unreservd. Today we will be talking about some of the lived experiences of South Asian daughters within South Asian families.
Hi, my name is Natasha. I'm 22 years old and my parents are kind of in between being traditional and progressive.
Hi, my name is Noor. I'm also 22 years old and my parents are also kind of in between everything.
Hi, my name is Lizanne. I'm 23 years old and I'd say my parents are traditional but learning how to be more progressive.
So there's always a constant battle of who has it worse between daughters versus sons in South Asian families. So I want to shine light on some of the lived experiences with both the daughters and the sons in South Asian families. So today we'll be examining the perspective of South Asian daughters. So what I want to talk about first is that there are many different responsibilities and added pressures of being daughters of South Asian households. But you see them change and differ from family to family, traditional to progressive, and even positive environments to toxic environments. So as daughters of South Asian households, what are some responsibilities that you guys hold in the family? So it could be anything from helping around the house, financial responsibilities, education-wise, growth, etc.
So definitely I find that there's a lot more responsibilities to do like housework, whereas like that's not really something that they get their sons to do. So it's definitely like cooking, cleaning, taking care of like my younger siblings and stuff. A lot of responsibilities that I've had to kind of take over, whereas like my brothers don't, even though like we're fairly similar in age.
Well, I am the youngest. I have an older brother, and I would say that as a daughter, my expectations have been, I guess, around the house as well, but I think most parents want any of their kids to at least do something. But I would say like education has been really important, but also my brother hasn't really been around as much for me to exactly know what the pressures on him would exactly be. So whatever I'm not seeing from my brother, I guess those would be the pressures that are put onto me because they want some sort of response from one of the kids.
Yeah, I think for me, like my parents have like a general idea of like, okay, you know, help around, you have a couple chores you need to do and make sure your bed is made, just like things like that. But sometimes I do find, you know, I'll make my bed and my brother's expectation is mom will do it. Like so in that regard, it's not that serious, but there's still that factor of, okay, there's more expectation towards me. Like financially, they don't put any pressure on us because my parents are the type where like their main focus is, okay, like just focus on your education and that's your main responsibility. Yeah. So that's kind of where we stand with that.
Mine is very similar to yours as well, in terms of like, I'm responsible for my own laundry and chores and stuff, which I mean, as a young adult, I would expect anyone would be responsible for their own chores and stuff. But at the same time, my brother I have a younger brother who's 18. He doesn't have the same expectations as I do. So if he doesn't do his laundry, he doesn't do his chores. Oh, it's fine, mom will do it for me. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. So I kind of wanted to piggyback off your point where you said that. How do you guys think your responsibilities differ from the responsibilities of like your brothers in the family?
So my brother, he's about the same age. He's 20. And so for him, the expectation is kind of just, okay, you just really just focus on school. Like otherwise you can do whatever you want. You can go out, play golf every single day for 5 hours, totally fine. That's all he has to really worry about. Again, we're fortunate where our parents will take care of like most of the financial side of things, whatever. But if we want to take the initiative, we will. And so that pressure isn't there for us. But on my end, the expectation's more, even though and it's just myself and my brother, even though I'm the daughter, I'm also like in what brown families would consider the son of the family, like the oldest son, where I help my dad with like business, I'll help my dad with different things around the house, like even just renovation wise, we're doing renovations, it's on me. What do you think we should do? Because that's what he wants. Just, I'm the son too. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I find that my brother just gets away with doing a lot of things, whereas like if I were to do the same thing, I would catch a lot more heat. So I feel like there's a responsibility for me to like appease my parents more than like my brothers would. So like they want us both to do well like with our education, but if I were to bring a bad grade home, it would be a lot worse than if my brother were to bring a bad grade home. Or if I wanted to go out, it's always like a huge fight, but my brother can walk out the door even though he's younger than me.
100%.
So it's just stuff like that.
Yep. I would say for myself that I'm also, I guess, privileged enough and blessed to have parents that are able to take care of me financially. So there's not as much pressure to, pay for school or things like that, because we're immigrants, right? We came to this country, as they say, for more opportunities and things like that. So for education-wise, they will help out a lot, as long as, I do my part, maintain my grades, things like that. But I think the dynamic is a little bit different because I'm the good one compared to my brother, right? But I'm also the one who's constantly trying to seek approval because my parents are so focused on making sure that my brother is good.
Yeah.
So even if I do something good, I'm still seeking approval because I don't think it's as noticed as if compared to, I guess, when he would be doing something good.
It's funny you say that because it's kind of same and different where I'm the good one, I'm the one that's like, okay, I mean, my brother's not a bad kid, but it's just more so they expect me to be the role model. And so if he does something, okay, he's the younger one, he's a boy, it's different. And I've gotten that sentence so many times, right? It's just a write-off where it's like, you're supposed to be, you shouldn't be the one going out past midnight. Your brother, if he does it, okay, he'll learn. Kind of that thing.
Exactly. So. Yeah, I actually have to hear stuff like that all the time where even if it's just him going out of the house and I'll be home, with my parents, they'll be like, oh, this is because of you, because you set the standard of going out, and now we can't tell him, but really you can, because you say it to me too.
I feel like it has a lot to do with which sibling you are, so whether you're the eldest, middle, or youngest sibling. You guys have an array of siblings. So for me, I'm the eldest daughter, so I can attest to your experience as well. That I'm the one, if there's renovations or something in the house, my dad would expect me to YouTube everything and learn how to do it versus
go to Rona.
Yeah, exactly.
Get a mirror.
Kind of thing. And also my brother's going into university now, post-secondary schooling, but it's on me to do everything for his RESP, learning about when his OSAP comes in. But I'm like, why? It's not my situation, to have to deal with this, you know what I mean? I was the eldest daughter, the eldest child at least, so I didn't have anyone on my side to learn how to do all this stuff, so I feel like, I'm there to guide him, I'm there to help him, obviously, of course. But this is something that he should also learn for himself, in case I'm not there to do it for him, in case my parents don't understand enough, right? But so also with that point, I wanted to bring up, so in South Asian households, in various South Asian cultures as well, there's this added pressure on the sons, that they will be the ones to take care of their parents during old age, and as opposed to the daughter. So whether it's the eldest son or the youngest son, it's usually the pressure is on them. So I wanted to ask you guys, do you guys feel the pressure added onto you as being the woman of the house, being by taking over an array of responsibilities? So an example I can provide would be grow up faster, to be financially stable, to pick the right career path for you and your family, to have maybe a vehicle as soon as possible so you can go around and run all the errands for your family, to get married, buy a house eventually, and be able to provide for your family and your parents as well.
I would say that I have an older brother, but I think the responsibility is more on me to take care of my parents in their old age, because I've been around my parents more. So even how you're saying, help with moving furniture or doing home things like that, I feel like I do that because I'm a strong woman, but also because my brother's not there to do it.
Right.
So it's, my dad's not going to ask my mom to do it, she's not going to do it. So I'm the one who kind of replaces that.
Yeah.
And I would say that to take care of my parents in their old age, to have a car and all of these kinds of things, I want to do that on my own. So as much as sometimes I'll be like, okay, I feel like I'm growing up too fast, or that independence from a South Asian household, you want it a lot quicker and a lot younger.
It's
you don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't get the independence in whatever way that may look. You often want to grow up too fast, or you're the one who ends up being the parent.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes independence is usually frowned upon in some families as well, because they're just we don't want you to be able to do all these things by yourself and for yourself. We want to be able to provide that for you, but at the same time, we're not going to give you everything you want either, right?
And I think it doesn't always translate. Sometimes it translates as, okay, no, I don't want you to do these things because I want to be I don't want to say in control of the situation, but I want to be in control of the situation. But sometimes it also comes across that what it's meant to be comes across as different, whereas they would think, no, I want to help you, which is why I'm guiding every step. Exactly. I'm guiding you every step of the way. Why I'm asking you when this is happening, when you're doing this, because I want your life to be good.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like a two-way streak with that what you just said.
I find that with my parents, like, they would like me, they rely on me, but they want to rely on me in very specific ways. So, like, they have, like, this outline that they see for me of, like, what I'll do when I'm older, when I'll get married, what kind of job I'll have. And so, like, they actually frown on me having a job at this age because they're like, you shouldn't be working now, you should be doing school, and so you could have a job where you can support us later. So there's, like, a lot of freedoms and growing up that they frown upon, and then there's the freedom in growing up that they like. So it's, like, a very specific path they want to follow, that they want you to follow, and if you don't, then they're not necessarily happy with it, even if it is a different way of growing up.
Right. It's like they have a vision for you.
Yeah, it's a vision, and then like straying from it is just frowned upon and not seen as respectful as the way that they want you to go about it.
For sure. I think for me, it's more so like my parents don't, they don't expect either of us, it's just the two of us, they don't really expect either of us to kind of take care of them when they're older, which is like good and bad in the sense that like I'm very close to my parents, so I obviously love spending time with them even when they drive me crazy, but I kind of worry sometimes because my brother doesn't have that same, I feel like, emotional connection to his parents. He's like, oh, I want to just do my thing and like be on my own and kind of whatever. So I think from that perspective our ideas vary.
I feel like that may also be in terms of age as well, because
Yeah.
my brother being 18, he's the same. But when I look back, sometimes like when I catch myself like thinking about something, like, oh, you know, he should be doing this like by now kind of thing, I catch myself being a hypocrite sometimes because I remember I was like, oh, when I was 18, I didn't have the best relationship with my parents. I did not care about my family like that. I did not want to do all these things. So I kind of understand his perspective in that sense, because I'm grown now and now I do have somewhat of a healthy relationship with them.
I find that like being the oldest and being like the daughter, they have like more of a, not necessarily a grasp, but like I'm a lot closer to my parents, and I find that like they like that. Whereas with my brother, they were like, oh, like he drifted, whatever. He's a guy and he's gonna do whatever, but like I can't necessarily even just be like, oh, I don't want to talk to you guys anymore. You know, but like we are close.
I think like for me, for the past like 5 years, I was living alone, and then like now since I've graduated in the pandemic and like moving back in with my parents, there's like a newfound appreciation for them, and like learning more about their character, like trying to understand them more. And I never did that when I was, you know, a lot younger. I had to take that step away from them to then come back and realize, okay, like you guys are somewhat normal.
Right.
And I feel like being adult now, you kind of see them more as like people versus like, oh,
like,
these are my parents.
I would say my mom and I could be friends, you know? I don't want to gas
Oh,
her
that's
too
so
much.
cute.
Well, that's the thing, like my mom, ever since I was little, like we would always have this conversation where she'd be like, you're my best friend, and I would always say, you're my best friend. But the thing is, for anyone that knows me and knows me and my mom's relationship, we're super close, but we fight so much because we literally fight like best friends. We're to the point where it's bad sometimes. Like sometimes it takes a toll on me because I'm like, your opinion matters the most to me, and sometimes I feel like I shouldn't care about your opinion because of how much it affects me. But you're in my mind my best friend, so I feel like I have to.
I think I seek the approval of my mom the most. Okay, like I know I have my dad, like, you know,
he's cool.
You know, we're homies, we're great. But my mom, I think I seek approval from her the most because I feel like she favors my brother. Maybe because he kind of like strayed off a little bit, you know? So I think she wants to find more of a connection with him, and she kind of can get frustrated or take it out on me at times.
100%.
So like I seek her approval more than my dad. Like my dad's just kind of chilling there. He's more, I would say he's more emotional than my mom. I can talk to him about whatever, but I don't necessarily want to because I want to have the harder conversations with my mom.
I get that.
Like I want to bond with her more and be able to call her my best friend. I don't think I can do that because I'm still healing from all the childhood trauma, but slowly it's like getting better, you know? Slowly I'm able to have more open communication with her and tell her like, hey, look, this is triggering, don't do that. Or like, we need to talk, or we need to, you know, reevaluate this situation.
And what you're saying and how it affects me.
And I never used to be able to do that as a kid. You might not have really realized how something is affecting you or how it may be triggering, but I think definitely taking that space and like time away from everything, and then moving back into it, I'm like, oh shit, this is triggering.
Yeah.
Or like this needs work, or we need to communicate better.
It's because we didn't, and I think maybe this is in part something to do with the South Asian culture in general, but we don't talk about these things.
Never.
Yeah.
Like,
there's no sympathy.
There's
with,
no,
like,
it's like I'd be writing, a major exam, and I'll be like, I have literal anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, I have not booked my exam because I feel like I'm not ready, and I just keep pushing it off because I'm anxious. And it's like, no, just get the anxiety.
There's no such thing.
Yeah, don't think about
it.
Yeah.
And at some point, finally, they're coming, and I think that's why, what you said earlier about how your parents are, learning to be more progressive, is important, because that's what I feel with my parents. Like, they are suddenly having these conversations. My mom literally just today in our family group chat sent a picture that was like a quote about mental health. And every time I mentioned something about mental health to her before, she would literally say something like, stop talking about mental disease and this and that, because they didn't know how to differentiate it, right? But now in our family, we all start talking about it, like extended family included. So it's kind of, I think, that part of it too.
It's mostly like, oh, how can you be depressed? We've done so much for you.
Yeah.
We've given you X, Y, and Z. We've came to this country, like this, that, and the other. But it's like, there's more to it. Like, it's not about you.
Yeah.
You can't like focus it on that.
Exactly.
I find that like being emotionally connected to us was never a priority for my parents. Like, ever since I was young, I always heard like, we're not your friends from the playground, you know, like,
same.
like we're not your friends. Like, don't think that we're gonna agree with you or have to agree with you on anything. Like, what we say goes. Like, they definitely parented by fear. So like, I feel like that's the reason that a lot of like, and I find that a lot of South Asian parents do that, and I feel like that's why mental health like issues are so prevalent within the South Asian community, because it makes you anxious, right? And I feel like that's the thing my parents are grasping the slowest, that like, it's important to have like emotional bonds with your children, otherwise they will never come to you with anything, and you won't either.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's interesting, because growing up, so my mom and I didn't have the best relationship. It was not healthy at all. But growing up, she always wanted to have a healthy relationship with me, but I just could not. So she would say these things. She'd be like, like all these other girls with their daughters and stuff, and with their moms, like they're always best friends. They go to get their nails done. They go to the park together. They go for walks and stuff. But you never do anything with me, which is interesting now, because now I'm the one saying, why are you always going to work? Like, come hang out with me, like hang out with me. Or she like leaves for a few hours. I was like, why didn't you take me to run errands? I would have came with you. So it's interesting to see that dynamic kind of flip. Like you said, like spending time away from my parents and stuff, and actually learning who I am as a person, and how those experiences growing up, and those traumatic experiences, in fact, kind of shaped me who I am, and seeing my growth, and now seeing my parents' growth with that as well, because now they're more understanding about mental health as well. My dad, actually a few months ago, he I don't know, the TDSB or something, they emailed him like about like an online workshop on like mental health and how to like help your kids like through COVID and like the pandemic, the school is over or something. And he was like, oh, should I like make a Zoom account for this? Like, should I like go to it and stuff? So it was like, when he said that, I was like, oh, that's kind of heartwarming to see, because if I was back when I was in high school, like that would never have been the case. My parents wouldn't even batted an eye about like, oh, let me go like sign into this like mental health workshop kind of thing. But now it's nice to see, and it's very, very heartwarming to see that my brother's getting that growing up, right?
Yeah.
And like, he's not going through half the traumatic experiences that I would have gone through as well.
But then that makes them thankless too, because they don't realize it.
Exactly.
So.
But I feel like that also comes from growth and age as well
course,
after. Yeah. So kind of to pivot, how do you feel about sharing your experiences of being the daughter of a South Asian household to other people who may not understand those experiences? And if you guys have expressed these concerns or views to other people, how did it go and how did it react, specifically parents as well?
I think that when you say, South Asian women and oppression, a lot of times there's this monolithic lens to it, when in fact, India is so diverse, like, I'm Goan. I was ruled, like, Goa was ruled by the Portuguese, so like, how things operate, I guess, for my culture is very different. I don't think it's as traditional as the rest of India. It's also Catholic, you know what I mean? That also plays a role in how, I guess, ideas are perceived for gendered roles. And I think talking about my experiences, I'm pretty open. Like, honestly,
Yeah.
you guys are strangers and I'm out here, telling you my life story. And
Yeah.
I'm not scared to share that. I think even with other Asian parents or South Asian parents, I'm not really afraid to share my experiences with them because I think when you're living in such a melting pot, right, and being part of all these different ethnicities, even though we're South Asian, like, there's some form of kinship that we can form in that struggle.
Yeah.
So, like, if I tell you my oppressions, I think you'd be able to understand, or at least try to, as a person of color at least,
Yeah.
right? But also, the kinds of people that I've noticed my parents hanging around, it's also really interesting because you kind of gauge who your parents are by the people that they're hanging around. What kinds of conversations are they having? And why I say that they're becoming progressive is because I can see that the different kinds of people that they're hanging out with show me those ideas. Like, they're talking about racism, or they're talking about like sexuality, which are conversations that you most definitely don't have with
Your
very
parents.
traditional Indian
Yeah.
people, right? Even things like marriage, arranged marriages, and things like that. Like, we're able to have open discussions about dating, and they're able to make fun and poke jokes at us and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid,
Yeah.
personally.
I find that, like, in terms of oppression, you have to look back to see, like, where your parents came from, or like where they grew up and how was the culture there, because it all comes from, like, the culture that they were born into. And I feel like I'm lucky to have been born in Canada because I can fight for my freedoms a lot more than they could have.
Because you know things too.
Exactly,
These
because, like,
conversations.
they weren't exposed to the things we were exposed to. Like,
Yeah.
I can pretty much wear whatever I want here. I would have not, like, flied for my mom back in India, so I can see why she would stop me from wearing these things, because she never did.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of, like, introducing your parents to a new culture, and if you introduce a new culture, as long as they're a little bit open to it, they will change.
Yeah.
So it just depends on where you come from, and oppression's not just, like, a single thing. Like, people say, oh, they're being oppressed, and I think it means, like, you're not allowed to do anything, or, like, but it's like thought processes, and like, it's not always like physical things, because like my parents didn't believe in mental health. Like, when I came to them with mental health issues, they were like, that's not real, so, like, there's just different things that you have to go through and have to unlearn, basically. And
Going back to your point about you being able to wear whatever you want here. So an example that I can provide with that is when I did a month-long trip to India back in January with my mom. It was kind of like a mother-daughter trip, but we were also there for, like, my cousin's wedding and stuff like that. But yeah, it was nice. But the thing is, what I noticed there is it's so much harder for the women there to be able to say something about something versus here. Like, if my mom told me, she would never, but if my mom told me, hey, don't wear that top because, like, it's showing too much cleavage, I would straight up be like, no, I'm still going to wear it. Versus over there in India, it's kind of like they couldn't say it because they already knew what the response was going to be and how they were going to be perceived. So they would just kind of be quiet and take it. And they'd be like, yeah, you're right.
The way that men are behaving there is different.
Very, very different.
Because they're babied so much.
Yeah.
They're trained differently, right?
Yeah.
It's actually interesting because my aunt and I had to talk about this when I was in India.
Yeah.
And it was about my cousin and his, like, girlfriend and, like, them getting married. So we were just, like, talking about it. And it was something about, like, oh yeah, like, I'm still doing his laundry. It was something along the lines of, like, oh, I'm still doing his chores and stuff. And then I said, oh, I would never want a man whose mom is still doing his chores for him. You know what I mean? Like, I want him to know how to do his laundry. I want him to know how to do the dishes and be able to, like, financially provide for himself and stuff, right? That's something I look for. And she was like, yeah, but when he gets a wife, she'll just, like, fix him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of just
Pause.
and I was like,
It's
that's
like the
not
onus
how
is
it
put
should
on,
be.
but that's what they do, right? The onus is
100%.
put on them, and it's like that's I think where people's perception of, like, this comes up, where it's like, oh, the wife has so many responsibilities, the
Eventually,
man's just
he's
gonna
gonna get
adapt,
fixed.
like he's
Yeah.
gonna get fixed.
Yeah, yeah.
Not realistic, right?
And with that conversation, I was just like, no, that is not something that flies here, especially because women have so much more of a say now of what they're looking for. Even within arranged marriages, they're just like, no, I'm looking for specific details, and this is what I want, and this is what I'm going to get.
Yeah.
Right? An example would be the show Indian
I was
Matchmaking.
just gonna,
I don't know if you guys watch that, but it was on
Anti-FEMA.
Netflix. Yeah. And there's this one woman on it. I think her name was Nikita. I don't remember, Anita or Nikita, one of the two. but she was like, oh, I have this whole business and stuff, so I wouldn't want my man to like tell me to stop doing my business or stop doing this because I need to take care of the kids and take care of the house and stuff.
Yeah.
And Seema auntie was just like, no, that's too much. That's too much. You need to
You're asking-
compromise. Yeah, and that's literally how it is in India
Like, that
because
one guy was like, he saw so many different women.
oh
And they
yes.
just like, were like, okay, whatever. But when the girl was seeing so many different men, they're like, yo, stop being choosy.
Yeah, you're being
like just
too
pick
picky.
one. Eventually, it's going to work out. And I feel like with that notion, it's just kind of very, very hard. And I feel like as us living in Canada here and kind of us having the higher privilege of being able to like say our say our experiences and be able to be choosy and be able to be like, hey, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, this is what I want, this is how I envision my life, whether a man is in it or not, right?
Yeah.
But over there, it's just so much harder given the circumstances. Like sometimes they can't because there's just added family pressures and added societal pressures and them not being able to. Oh yeah,
Definitely.
casteism is huge as well. So kind of just turn points to go with the theme of the conversation. So South Asian sons and daughters often feel as though they have to live double lives to fulfill expectations of their parents while also trying to fulfill their own passions and the lifestyle that they want to live. So going with the whole vision theme. So what describes the perfect daughter within a South Asian family from your experience? So within your own family dynamic, what would be your parents' vision for you to be the perfect daughter?
I think.
And how close are you to that description?
Oh, I'm so far from my parents' description of being a perfect daughter. And that's to them. They don't even know how far I am from it. So I think my parents just would have loved if I was nice and homey and did my education, didn't work, stayed at home, was respectful, never disagreed with them. I think that they would have my mom would have liked me to be a lot like her, because when she tells me about her experience growing up, it was I always listened to my parents. I never did anything that would upset them. I always respected them. My mom even got an arranged marriage, and when she did, even that wasn't even a huge thing in their community, because my parents are Catholic as well. So most Catholic Indians that they knew, even her brother just chose his own wife, but she was so obedient that she just did whatever her mom told her to. And I guess my dad, well, he was a boy, so he didn't have to do all that. But to them, I'm so far from that, because I disagree with them on everything. Everything is a fight with me. So I think they would have just liked somebody obedient and well cultured.
I would say the same thing. Everything's always a fight with me too. My dad always argues that I should be a lawyer because of it.
Every day.
You always have an excuse for everything, or you always have some counter argument. I was like, yeah, because this is not right, or there's other ways of doing things, or better ways of doing things. I would say that initially, their perfect daughter would be someone who's not tatted up and piercings. Would also be someone who, I guess, uneducated, so that's there. But also, I guess, dating culture and who you're dating, who you're seeing, who you're friends with. I have a lot of African and Caribbean friends. Not a lot of Indian friends, actually. I don't know why, but that will be something, that they might throw into the mix. Or even a lot of comparison. I don't even think the perfect daughter is really there. It's always why can't you be more like this person? Or look at this person doing this. You should do that. I think once they see something that they deem as good, they automatically want to instill that you try to do that too, or you try to get on that person's level. It's more so of a competition than really being perfect, because I can say that from my experiences, it's comparing my mom's maybe siblings and where their kids are at to where I'm at, for example, It doesn't really happen as much now because they're so much older than I am, but it's oftentimes oh, this person is doing this. What would this person say if they saw you, or, saw you doing this? It's more of how you're perceived by other people.
Right.
And maintaining this kind of status.
I think it's funny because it's what you just said. It's literally what Hassan Minhaj says in one of his first Patriot Act shows, where he says, all brown parents always say like "lo kya kenge," which means like what are people gonna think?
Yeah.
And so it's so funny you literally just said that because that's the priority in a lot of
It's
sorry,
more
I
about-
cut you off.
like,
But
no, it's just more about how you're appearing towards other
Right.
people. They care more about, I think, maintaining this image that you are the perfect daughter, even if you're not.
Yeah.
But when you go on, wherever you're going, you have to present yourself as that perfect Indian daughter.
Exactly. I find that in the South Asian communities, things are so image driven. Like, I
Yeah.
find there's always like a competition about whose kids are doing better, and like the aunties are talking, and all of that. So it's like so much so much pressure is put on you to not embarrass your family.
Yeah.
That
Not
like
ruin
you
the
have to
family.
hide away anything that would do that. Otherwise,
Even if
you
it's
know.
like embarrass the family from back home, they're not gonna know about it if you just don't tell them. You
Yeah.
know? Like,
Yeah, like when my parents video call like my aunts and stuff
Oh,
in
yeah.
India, I have to change and I have to like put a hat on so they don't have short hair and all these things.
for me, I think my experiences are just slightly different. Like my mom, for example, she like went to school here. Like she lived in the Middle East, so she didn't really have the necessarily what you would think is traditional like South Asian upbringing because she wasn't in South Asia when she was in the Middle East and Canada. So from that perspective, I have like a little bit more understanding because she's kind of been through that. Like when you said about the double life.
Right.
She's been through that. She knows it. She went to high school here. She went to university here, so she knows. So it's funny because although she has that understanding, these things will still come up. Like I'll go out in a sleeveless top, and she'll be like, "Hunter, like, what are you doing? Like, your dad is not going to be happy. Like,
Yeah.
whatever." And so, therefore, you shouldn't do it, even though she did those things too. So it's kind of that's one thing. I think in terms of like the ideal daughter, I feel like it's almost standardized based on what everyone's saying. It's like have a good education, be a good role model, be proper. Yeah.
Basically.
And
And knowing how to pack a second outfit in your bag.
I did that
Oh
on
my
my
God.
way here.
Yeah, how to
I had
sober yourself
to
up
leave-
on the
you
spot.
to leave my house today because I just didn't want to have a conversation about it. I had a hoodie on top.
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't feel like doing this
Yeah.
right now. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure my mom thinks I'm at Pottery Barn right now. So just gonna say that as
My
well.
mom thinks I'm on a really long bike ride, so
It's like, you really do have to live that double life. And it's not like they don't know about it. Like they know my brother's not always, when he says he's in the library, he's not always in the library, but they're not gonna question it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know.
I think I've like learned how to be honest, and like the reason for that is because I know I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if I'm hiding from that, I feel like that's giving them a reason to think or like justify the fact that they think whatever I'm doing is wrong.
Right.
So I'll automatically, tell them, okay, I'm getting a tattoo, I'm getting a piercing, I'm wearing this, I don't want to wear a bra, I smoke a lot of weed, I'm going to drink. I just be completely honest. You want to get mad, go ahead and get mad. But I'm being honest with you, and I know that those are my values, those are my morals, and if you can't accept that, then like, don't come to a westernized country where this is how I'm being raised, you know what I mean? Like, also, I think it's part of the acculturation process. If you want to assimilate or integrate, you have to pick and choose which ones you want to go with. I came here when I was like 4 years old. You know what I mean? I can't have the strict traditional expectations that you want of me because that's not what's presented around me. And then on top of that, growing up, I was ashamed of being brown. You want to be more like the white girl next to you, and you want to dress more like her, and you want to, I guess, rebel. And earlier in one of our conversations, we were talking about like, doing things that we're not supposed to be doing. Like you're attracted to doing those things, and I think that pushes you even more to at least try it, because you know you're not allowed to.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of like us being honest with our parents, to them they kind of just see it as like you rebelling. They don't see it as like, oh, I'm very appreciative of the fact that my daughters are telling me straight up, like,
Honest,
they're being honest, right? And we're kind of we respect them enough to be honest with them, but they see it as like, no, you're rebelling, you're doing all these bad things. Why are you doing this to put me to shame?
I
Like,
think
what if someone
initially
else
it's
finds
like
out?
I think one thing is that they don't necessarily note, like, okay, what are they not doing? It's more so like, I think it's just an innate thing within the culture where you point out the flaws more than you do point out the great things. Like, like you said,
Always looking for a
it's like,
negative.
okay, your parents are going to complain that you're tatted in peers, but they're not going to be proud of the fact that you are educated, you are well spoken, you have XYZ going for you. So it's like, why don't we focus on that? Because
Yeah.
that would also help, you know, the relationships and then the conversations of honesty and stuff like that. You know
I
what I
think
mean?
you have to like break down that stigma, and initially, like that's why I said they're in the process of learning and unlearning, because
Yeah.
my honesty, I think, has allowed them to realize that there's nothing wrong with it, and
Yeah.
those things may not define me,
Mhm.
but they're still learning how to like navigate in spaces of maybe other Indian people who aren't as progressive. And I want to be that person to show you, hey, I can be tatted, I can smoke weed, I can also be educated, and I can also be, you know, determined and well spoken and all
Yeah.
of those things that
They're not
are doing
monogamous,
good.
but they
Yeah.
can be in, you know, harmony
Yeah,
with
it's like
each
a
other.
game of inches, you know, like you gotta slowly break them into like the
Yeah.
fact that like this is okay, because there's so much stigma around these things, especially from where they came from, that they think that as soon as you do something, that means your life is ruined.
Yeah.
And that my parents always say like, oh, do you hate me? Like, are you
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
this to me
yeah.
on purpose? Like, did I do
Yeah.
something to you?
Yeah.
Is this why you're torturing me? And I'm all like,
Is
it's not
this
about
not
you. This is
punishment?
just, you know, like I'm not doing it to you. I'm actually doing it to
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
But like, okay.
Yeah,
One
that's-
of my mom's like favorite lines growing up was like, "Is this God's way of punishing me?"
Oh, yeah,
Oh
Is
my
this God's way of
God.
punishing
Oh my
me?"
God.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah, they'll always be like, oh, in India, like kids treat their parents like they're Bhagwan or God. And it's like, but you're not.
That's always a thing though, like they don't want to take accountability or apologize.
Yo.
And like you're always meant to, I guess, kiss at their feet.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even if you're doing the wrong thing, like mentioned
Yeah,
earlier,
yeah.
they always find the negatives in it. So sometimes if I'm working too much, they say, "Oh, you know, don't be working too much. Focus more on education."
Yeah.
I start focusing more on my courses and my schoolwork. They're like, "Oh, you're doing too much
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
take a break." I take
Yeah.
a break, go out with my friends. They're like, "Why are you going out with your
take a
friends?
break, yeah.
You could
My
be
parents-
working
yeah.
inside. You could be doing school instead." And if I stay home too much, they're like, "You could be working.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
aren't you studying right now?"
It's always
There's
you
just
can't
so
do it.
many.
It's the nature of
variables.
picking the flaws.
Oh, 100%.
It's moving the goalposts. It's like, oh, you're doing this now, but why aren't you doing that?
Yeah,
and if you
yeah.
do that, it's like, oh, but you're not doing this other thing.
Exactly.
And it's like,
Did you do the thing I told you last week though?
exactly.
I'm like,
Exactly.
what? So with that being said, have you ever been stopped? Sorry, have you ever been stopped from taking opportunities? So like jobs, wearing certain things, doing certain things, due to the statement of what will society think, what will people think, what would other family members think?
I actually
My
feel,
whole-
sorry.
my whole thing, like my whole persona, yeah.
Yeah, like I actually feel like I only started like living after I moved out, which was last year, and I moved out for about a year. But before that, I felt like anything, like there were, like everything was a fight, and most of them I lost. So I wasn't going anywhere. Like so many experiences, I look back and I'm like, I'm gonna fight harder than ever to do things I want to do now, because I missed out on so many things growing up, so many experiences. Like I never got to do sleepovers, never got to hang out with my friends, never got to do after school activities. I never got to do, like, my summer vacations were spent with my parents bringing math books from India
Oh,
and making me sit at the table all day. All I remember is crying at the table, being like, I don't want to do this anymore. You know? Yeah.
Oh, my dad would badger me with the timetables,
I
and
would cry.
lo and behold, I
They'd be
suck
sitting
at
there with the
math. It was
hanger,
my
you
worst
know, in case you
subject.
got something wrong.
So clearly, all that yelling and screaming did not help me do my times tables.
See, that makes
Exactly.
me more appreciative of like my experiences, because obviously I'll feel like, okay, you know, I had to, I don't know, like I don't even know, come home early, like whatever from an event. Like I've gone. That's the biggest thing for me is I felt like at one point in high school I would always feel like I wouldn't even try going out sometimes because I'm like,
Yeah.
what's the point? Like my
Yeah.
parents would call me
Exactly.
18 times,
Yeah.
even
And you're just tired of it at that point.
Yeah,
You don't
even-
want
you
to have to
stop
fight
enjoying
again.
the time that you're
because you're
out.
stressing. Like
Exactly.
the second my
Yeah.
mom calls me, this happened in January this year, and I like went out with a friend for my birthday. I was 15 minutes away from home, but we were just hanging out getting food, and I was like, my mom called me, and she sounded kind of off, and I didn't even know if she was upset. I just
Yeah.
thought she was.
You automatically.
And you
Yeah.
start getting worried, and I'm like, okay, no, I have to go. Like I have to go. And my friend came from far away. Like I was like, no, I have to go.
Yeah.
And so it's like that type of thing that I think I kind of internalized, and it kind of made me a little angry or irritated when I was younger. But I think, like you said, like moving away was a big thing for me when I moved to for university. I experienced my own things, and I think that kind of taught me, you know, you can have both. You can be a good daughter with like the values that your parents kind of expect or whatever, if they align with you.
Yeah.
And at the same time, make yourself happy. And it's still something I'm working on, but I think, you know, you just kind of have to learn.
I can definitely relate on the anxiety, right? Because even now I'm going out, I'm always like watching around. Like I see, if I see a gray Corolla anywhere, I'm like, is that my dad?
Oh, trust, I know.
It's a lot of anxiety. There's so many times that I'm like, you know what? Let me just cancel these plans because I don't even want to have
It's
the
just
argument
easier.
with my
Exactly.
parents
Yeah.
to even.
I hate
even be able to go out.
Yeah.
Getting that text of where are you?
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
When are you coming home?
The 10
Oh,
minute
yeah,
calls.
If they have
What
the
a
dot,
disaster.
dot.
Oh my god.
Because that's just how I think grandparents text sometimes,
Yeah,
but you
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like they're angry at you.
Yeah.
My
my
mom.
mom will text me saying, "Dad's angry, Dad's angry."
Yeah, my mom does that too. She's like, your dad's
though-
asking where I am.
Even though
No.
sometimes my dad will not care as much as my mom does at times because he's just tired and he just wants to go to sleep.
Yeah.
She'll text me saying, "Dad's angry," because she knows once I read that, I'm gonna know that my dad's angry. And when my dad's angry, that's not a good time. So I know to come home. But sometimes she'll do that and she'll just be like, "Oh, if I text her this, she'll come home right away," even though that's not
Yeah.
the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I'll usually get text messages from both my parents. So like, maybe I'll get a text message from my mom, saying where I'm at. I'll tell her where I'm at, and then maybe like 20 minutes later, I'll get a text message from my dad asking me the exact same question. Sometimes I'll literally just copy and paste the answer and be like, "Oh my god, do you guys not
Communicate with each other.
Like communicate. We even have a group chat. Like, ask me on there. Why
Yeah.
do I have to independently
Answer.
message you guys?"
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, they're sitting side by side.
But just
on
on their
their
phone.
phone.
Yeah.
I know my parents are talking about me from the minute I leave to the minute I come back.
Oh my
I know,
God.
like I can ignore any missed calls from my mom, but if there's one missed call from my dad, I'm running.
Yeah.
I'm flying
Yeah.
home. I will take an
Dad's
Uber from
somewhere
anywhere,
down.
and I will be home in
Yeah.
15 minutes
Yeah.
tops.
It's funny, one time in high school, actually, I admit I did rebel a lot in high school, but that's because of all these notions of like, I can't stay out after a certain time, or I
Yeah.
have to be home, I have to wear certain things. So I rebelled a lot, and I feel like me pushing the boundaries on my parents, that kind of led them to be more flexible now.
Yeah.
Because they do see the fact that it's like, I did all these things, but, I'm still doing well for myself,
Yeah.
right? So one time I was out at a party and I just did not want to come home, I was with all my friends and they called me like 50 times and I knew it wasn't an emergency. I knew it was not anything serious. They just wanted me to come home because I was late. And I just blocked my parents' number
Oh.
and my home phone number. And then I came home probably super late and they're just like, "Why didn't you answer anything?" I was like, "I didn't get a missed call. Look, like
My
there's
phone's
nothing.
dead.
Yeah, there's
no,
nothing
I put my
there.
phone on Do Not Disturb, and I'm like,
There's
I
nothing there.
didn't see
I don't
anything.
know
Even
what
check.
you're
Look.
Yeah, yeah.
I delete them all. I delete the text, and I'm like, I don't have any texts from you. What are you talking
I've
about?
done that so many times.
Exactly. Oh man. Okay, so kind of to switch the conversation topic, I want to talk about dating and relationships. So, are you guys open about dating, relationships, boyfriend, girlfriends, like sex, sexuality, with your parents and your family?
My parents avoid the topic like the plague, so
Mhm.
I have no idea what they even think about it, but I'm not bringing any of that to them just in case.
Yeah.
Because, like, they're just, like, back to, like, what I said about the emotional connection, I just don't think we develop the bond where they're comfortable talking to us about it, or whether, like, we're comfortable talking to them about it. Because I remember the only time they ever brought up anything, I was in grade 11, and they told me if I got a boyfriend, they would ship me to India. That's the last I've heard. So I don't know if anything's changed, but I'm not checking. So yeah.
I think for me, it's funny because all my life my mom would be like, don't worry about boys, don't talk about boys, don't like focus on school, like, because I don't know why that's the go-to, but focus on school, like that's it. And it's so funny because this summer she goes, 5 years of university and you couldn't bring home one nice guy? And I literally looked at her and I was like, are you serious right now? Like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, so, because the way it works in my family is, listen, when you want to get married and you guys are thinking about getting married, just tell your parents. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works in our family. We don't talk about it. It's not a conversation. They don't want to know. They don't need to know. So it's funny. That's just how it works in my family. It's like, if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist, so it's okay.
Exactly. If we don't see it, it doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
I'm
Exactly.
pretty open, I guess, with my parents if the relationship is serious enough for that. Even if I might be I would have to say now, in the current climate, I guess, at home, if I'm talking to somebody, I don't mind telling my parents about it. But they knew about my last relationship. That was about 3 years long. They knew about him. They've known about the past guys that I'm seeing. Did they ever like them? No. Did they ever meet them? No. They would make their judgments first before meeting the guy. I wouldn't say that they're too particular on the race of the guy that I'm dating, at least not anymore. It might have been like that when I was younger, date a brown guy, make sure he's X, Y, and Z. The biggest thing I think my parents would say would be make sure he's well educated, because I'm well educated, so they'll always kind of compare things you want someone who's on the same level as you.
Yeah, there's a standard.
Yeah, and I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, education isn't everything. I think people can be self-made and like be successful
Right.
like that. So I'm not that particular of if you have a degree or not. I don't think that makes you a good person or a good partner. But I think even with religion, they're like, make sure he's Catholic. But I do think if I was with somebody who wasn't, it might be a slight issue in the beginning.
Yeah.
It might be like a hurdle that I'll have to, teach them about and become the parent, I guess, in that situation. But I think with the way things are going, fingers crossed, that, they'll be open and they'll continue to like support me and whoever I choose to date or marry in the future. So.
Yeah. Like on that topic, for me, it's funny because I come from a very multicultural family. Like we have probably every single culture in our family, like married in whatever. So obviously, like some of my cousins are mixed, and that's something that's normalized within our house, or I guess our family environment. However, they'll always still make that comment, be like, find someone find a nice Pakistani Muslim boy. It'll make your life easy all the time. And it's funny because now I find myself subconsciously sometimes thinking about that and being like, it might just be easier. Yeah. But then it's like, but why am I limiting myself? You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's like, it's always in the back of your mind, or I don't know about you guys, but it's always in the back of my mind, these different like characteristics that they have or ideals that they have. And it's because I'm like, maybe they're right about it. Maybe they're older and wiser. So I think about it, and then it just makes things more difficult for you as a person because you're,
I think if I can find a nice going boy, I'm looking at the camera. If I can find a nice going Catholic boy,
drop your at.
LPN.cola. I'm here. I'm single. I'm available. But like, it's not only you. Like, I'm open. But
exactly.
if the opportunity presented itself, like, yes, that would be great. And I do think that being with someone who's of the same culture and background as you is a little bit easier because you have shared experiences or inside jokes that other people won't get. Like, you know what I mean? You can enjoy maybe similar foods or music, things like that.
Yeah.
But I also love learning about other people's cultures. Like,
exactly.
I graduated from UMT from a diaspora major, right? So I enjoy learning about other people's cultures. I would love to date anyone from a different culture. I'm not like opposed to that.
Right.
And I think sharing my culture with my partner is also important to me because I want to spend more time learning about my culture myself, right? And I think that if I was maybe with another going person, then I would like continue certain traditions or even learn more about my own traditions that way because I don't speak the language.
It pushes you more like closer to it.
Yeah. I don't speak Konkani, so it kind of sucks that I can't pass that on to my kids. But maybe if my husband, who is going, has that, that would obviously be an asset. But if you don't, like, I'm not gonna shit on you.
That's literally what my cousin said. So she married, it's not too different, but she married a Gujarati guy. So obviously there's some, like a little bit language because we can speak like Punjabi and Urdu. So there's 3 languages in the mix, but the thing is, he's always around our family, like whatever, and he's so into learning the language and stuff to a point where now when he's sitting at our family gathering, it's not like he's sitting there and just not understanding things because he's interested in it. And it's also pushed her because she talks about it now. She's having a kid soon, and she said, I'm sad that I don't speak Urdu the way that you do because I was fortunate to spend time with my grandmother and kind of learn that stuff, but she didn't. And she said at least them learning together kind of like helps and pushes them to do that. So it makes sense.
That's interesting. A few years ago, I dated a Christian guy, and at the time, a few years ago, I was not I wasn't in tune with my religion or culture at the time. So whenever he would ask me about like Hinduism or Jainism, I'd be like, oh, that's funny because I don't know a lot of this stuff. He would ask me like, what is the celebration of Diwali? Like, why do you guys celebrate Diwali? And I'd be like, it's a celebration of lights, and that's all I would know.
Yeah, you just know the title.
That's all I know. I wouldn't know the history behind it, the context behind why people do certain traditions during Diwali time like that, right? And that, I feel like that kind of pushed me to become more culturally aware in terms of like, oh, if this were the case, like if I were to marry someone outside of my race and ethnicity, I would want them to be educated on my culture and my religion and what I follow, but at the same time, like, in order to do that, I need to be able to learn that for myself, to be able to explain, this is why we celebrate Diwali, this is the story behind it. And I feel like dating someone outside of my race really pushed me to, you know, find myself in that, find myself in the sense where it's like, oh, you know, maybe I should be paying attention, and maybe I should be asking more questions, because growing up, whenever I asked my parents, like, oh, why do we do this tradition, or what does this mean, they would just be like, oh, we just do it because we do it. I never got that follow-up in terms of like, oh, this is the story behind it. So I feel like slowly throughout the years, I kind of like phased out of like not being interested enough and just not wanting to know anymore, because I was just like, well, I mean, if it was important, they would explain it, but clearly
it's just something you do.
It's just something I do, so I was never in tune with it. And then after, when someone starts asking me these questions, saying it's like, oh, why do you do this, or why is your religion believe in this, or do you do these certain things in your culture? And that's when I started learning, it's like, oh, like now I need to start asking questions again, because if someone were to ask me, I want to be able to let them know, like, this is what my religion is, this is what my culture is, these are the family traditions that we do because of this reason, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like fortunate that my parents like shared things like their language and stuff with me, and I find that like I did a lot of stuff on my own to connect. Like I picked up like classical dancing and just like things that I liked about my culture. So like I feel like I don't necessarily need somebody from my own culture to share it with, because you know I know about it myself, but I'd love anybody who would like to share in it with me, you know. So I'm not hard pressed for like race or anything. It's just I know who I am, and if you know who you are, that's all good.
Like I have a Chinese aunt, and she's literally obsessed with every aspect of like our culture. Like she's always like, oh, I want to do this, or like for Eid we have to do this or this, and she's so on top of it. Sometimes I'm like, oh, sorry, I forgot. Like she's like, what are you wearing? Like, did you buy your outfit yet? And I'm like, no, but like clearly you have. So it's really cool to see that.
Exactly.
Too.
I think like growing up, I kind of shied away from my Indianness, and now I find that I'm not Indian enough in most spaces. So like I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I navigate, like, you know, trying to understand myself better, or trying to understand my culture better, like not only for myself, but like you said, so I can share it with other people who do want to know more, and like my kids. It's more so like for knowing myself well enough to know that, okay, this is like the go-in part in me. I can share that with my kid.
So to wrap up, I wanted to talk about siblings and sibling rivalry, resentment, and jealousy and stuff like that. So having siblings often brings, as I said, rivalry, resentment, and jealousy, but it also brings support, bonding, and perspective. But I feel like that also varies on how close of an age you guys are, if you guys were close growing up, or if you guys were apart growing up. So everyone has different relationships with their siblings, and taking aspects of it into consideration. Especially how different the parenting styles were with you versus your older, younger siblings. So we all have brothers. We all have brothers. So of different ages, especially. So you have two younger brothers. You have a younger brother. I have and you have an older one, right? So do those restrictions differ from you and your siblings? So you having an older brother versus us having younger brothers. Do you find those restrictions and roles roles of being the youngest fall more on you, or do you, like you said, your brother isn't around, so I'm assuming like he's out of the house, like moved out, or?
Yeah. So my brother's almost 30, so the thing is, like, growing up, he was sick, so a lot of the attention was on him, and like making sure he was okay, making sure, you know, he got whatever attention that he needed, not only for like his medical condition, but like, you know, to deal with that. And so I think after high school, he jumped around from like colleges and whatnot, and then he moved to Montreal. He moved to Montreal for a while, and then he came back, and now he's currently living, I think, in Mississauga, and he's still not living at home, right? So I would say that majority of my life, I feel like it's been like an only child experience, but knowing that I have an older brother, I wouldn't say that my brother and I are necessarily close, because I don't really know him. I feel like I know what it's like to live with him from a young age, but even then, in being 23 now, I don't know his favorite color, I don't know his favorite food, I just know that he's a chef, you know, he makes great steaks. If anyone's looking for steaks, he's good at that. But I don't really know the responsibility-wise. I feel like it's been on me. The only thing that I would say is like he's gotten himself, I guess, into drama, and that kind of pressure of not doing the same mistakes or learning from his mistakes or being wiser than him, and those kinds of things are more at play than necessarily like the role that I must take on, because I've taken on majority of the roles, you know.
Right.
I'd say as far as like sibling rivalry, like my parents always did that thing, like you know how you said that they would compare you to other kids. They kind of compare me, and so one of my brothers is now like 8, so he came a lot later, but my other younger brother is 19 now. So there was a lot of comparing just even between the two of us. It's like, why can't you do this like him, or why can't you do this like her? So there was a lot of rivalry, and I found that because my parents never really tried to have an emotional bond with us, we didn't really try to have an emotional bond with each other. So even being so close in age, we were never close. We were always butting heads. And I thought that like I was being treated unfairly compared to him, because like obviously I was a girl, there's a lot more restrictions and this and that, and he thought he was being treated unfairly compared to me because he didn't think he was getting enough attention, and he felt, you know, like we both kind of faced our parents when they were very like harsh and traditional. And so I find that like in some ways we did bond with the fact that we both had like trauma, but we definitely paved the way for our now youngest brother, who doesn't have to face like any of that. So I don't know my brother. I'm not close to him. My brother actually recently moved out because he had a tussle with my parents. So they're still definitely traditional in many ways. But yeah, I'm not as close to him as I would have liked to be. But we do have a bond in the way that like we both kind of stuck it out, and like we both know what we went through, like with them.
I think for me it's a little different because, or maybe similar, I don't know. But as a kid, I would always feel the sense of like, okay, my brother's my mom's favorite. My dad was always he's indifferent. Plus I'm his favorite because I am his background. So I'm just gonna assume that I'm the favorite. But he says he loves us in his own way, and so does my mom. And I always grew up with whenever, you know, something was wrong, okay, he's different. That same thing we said before. And I remember, like, and I know that consciously that would always frustrate me because I'm like, I'm the one that's here helping you, you know, doing whatever around the house, doing your groceries, blah, blah, blah. And I'm proud to do it, but it obviously frustrates me when he gets so much love and not doing it. So I remember when I was younger, I really get frustrated, even now sometimes. But I think one thing that bonded us was not necessarily just sometimes, you know, my mom will say something or my dad will say something and he'll come to me because I'm his like confidant now. And I think university brought us together. We, for the first time ever, lived together outside of our home last year. And I think even though we butt heads even then, it was a bonding experience because, you know, when my mom would get frustrated at him for something, I would hear it, and then I would kind of understand. I'm like, listen, like I understand you're frustrated. Like she wants you to come home on the weekend. It's coming from a place of love because she just wants to see. It's not like she's trying to ruin your plan. Stuff like that.
Like a mediator.
You feel that. But in terms of the rules, it's still kind of the same. Like I'm always gonna, and I've accepted that I'm always gonna be the one that my parents will lean on, and that will make me overwhelmed sometimes. But I have the choice to say yes or no, and just kind of working through that, I think.
So closing thoughts. So along the lines of if you guys were to give a message out to the South Asian community pertaining to the topic of South Asian daughters and the things that we go through in our lived experiences within South Asian communities and South Asian families as well, what would you like to add or what would you like to say?
I would just say teach your children. I mean, I think there's never going to be a defined way to say every rule in the house is split. There's that ideal, I don't think personally will ever exist, but I think it's important to teach your children, both like your sons and your daughters, that what your general responsibility as a person is in this family, to have, you know, respect, but also be proactive with like doing things around the house, like teaching your sons and daughters from the beginning that there's no defined like just because you're a girl, you have to do the cooking, or just because you're the girl, you have to do the cleaning. And likewise, just because you're the son doesn't mean you're the only one that's going to have to take care of your parents. That should be on the daughters too. And like you should just be able to teach your kids equally those basic concepts of family values. That way your kids don't have this resentment of like, oh, my parents are unfair with me, or my parents are just kind of biased towards one kid or the other, because you want to have that good relationship with your kids. And I think that's something going forward you want to teach. So
yeah, I would say to like South Asian daughters, just don't give up the fight, because like if I look back at myself at 8, I would have never even assumed that I could leave the house looking like this, you know? So like, don't give up the fight, keep pushing, keep trying to explain to them, like, it is on you to get your own freedom, and you have to work for it, unfortunately, but the reward is so much better than just taking everything, lying down and being like, okay, I'm disenfranchised, I'm just gonna do whatever they tell me. We're in like a space where we can now fight for our freedoms, and we should definitely do that any chance that we get.
I would definitely say the same thing. Like, don't be afraid to use your voice and to communicate what your boundaries are with your parents, you know. And as someone who is living in Canada, right, I think there is going to be a lot of like learning and unlearning that both children and parents are going to have to do, and there is going to be a little bit of parenting, I guess, as children, you know, but if you want to see progression, I think that's the step that you're going to have to kind of accept and understand that your parents are just trying to teach you what they know, right? I don't think as parents you're setting out the worst intention for your child. You want to do whatever is best for them or whatever you think is best for them. And as someone who is able to use your voice, if you are able to use your voice, you know, like, do that to the best of your abilities and stand up for yourself.
Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this talk about the lived experiences within South Asian families with South Asian daughters.